Hey guys, it's Laurie of Laurie's Heirloom Sewing, and today I'm working on my fabric. Things had gotten just a little bit out of control in here, so I am doing what you might recognize from the video yesterday where I'm just sewing 2-inch strips of fabric together in long clothesline form like this. What I started out with was all of this fabric right here was cut weird and then just sort of flung on the table here in complete disarray. So I straightened it out, I squared it up by cutting off pieces of fabric that would basically prevent me from being able to think about the fabric creatively. Because I know that when my fabric is just all wadded up in a corner somewhere, I just look at it and think, oh, I really don't want to deal with that right now. So I sat down this morning and I cut 2-inch strips from the pieces that were just raggedy on the edges of my fabric. And then from there, I cut pieces that are not 2 inches, or they're not evenly 2 inches, and I'll talk about what I'm going to do with that in a minute. I have some squares because sometimes I want a 2-inch square cut out of cute fabric. So pieces that were large enough that I could get a little 2-inch square out of, I just kept like that. And then these are true cabbage. This is just little tiny pieces of fabric that I really wouldn't be able to use for anything else but to maybe stuff a pillow or a toy or, you know, something along those lines. If I need something like that, and I'm just keeping it in here. So what I plan to do with these is what I did yesterday, and I will try to link that video below, and that is use it as an interfacing between two pieces of fabric, as opposed to using true iron-on interfacing. So in that video we made this little basket. And we used pieces of fabric that would normally end up probably in a wastebasket and then in a landfill. And then while cotton fibers can break down in 2 to 5 years, anything else that's attached, like a button or a zipper or any kind of plastic or polyester, the thread, anything else is going to take anywhere from 20 to 200 years. Clothes that are not saleable are just dumped in mass in our landfills, and there they sit. For the most part, they are man-made fibers, but if they are made from cotton, they will have a polyester-ish or plastic-ish closure, like a button or a zipper or a clasp of some sort. All that just sits there and sits there and sits there and doesn't go anywhere for a long, long time. And it doesn't make it okay to me to throw cotton away that it doesn't take as long when I can use it. I mean, I might not use that basket for 200 years, but at least that's fabric that's not going in the landfill. So, alright, off of the soapbox. And in that video I show you how we use this temporary fabric adhesive. I have looked into the 505 spray, and it is actually quite safe to use environmentally. There are some problems. You don't want to ingest it. I'm going to sneeze. Oh. Okay, I was sneeze talking. That's really awesome. But it doesn't have an odor. And again, I linked in the video with the basket, I linked information about 505 and the safety or non-safety issues about using it. It contains non-volatile components that I think are safe. You really don't want to be like in it. So about 12 inches from your project. And then I typically will use something recycled like this. You know, I'll put my project on there and spray it. I don't always get, 12 inches away. I might do a little bit closer. But it's a really good project or product to use when you're doing a craft item. I don't recommend using this system right here for clothing. This is probably your best bet. And see, this is a polyester. This kind of thing, if it's in a collar or a placket or a, a cuff, that's going to sit there forever and ever in the landfill. That's basically what I'm talking about. So even if you throw away a cotton shirt, you're still throwing away something that's not likely going to degrade over time quickly. All right, so what I'm doing is these are going to stay out with my 505. These are my little tiny project pieces. These are the pieces that I am sewing together, and that goes in here. And I'm going to make some more baskets to store some of this messy stuff in. That's what I am currently working on. Okay, so basically when I'm doing something like this, what I'm doing is clothesline stitching. I just take two pieces, stitch them together, two pieces, stitch them together, and I just keep going. The only reason this isn't still attached is because I ran out of bobbin thread. Okay, so like right here I have fabric in the sewing machine and I've got two pieces all set to go. So I'm just going to keep stitching. Stitch this together. And remember a few minutes ago I was talking about 2-inch squares. So if you've got, say, a little quilty-ish kind of thing that you're working on, and you need a small quilt piece, this would then be 3.5 by almost 3. So out of this you could cut, say, a 1-by-1 square where you're half on the pink stripe and half on the purple, or you could do another purple here and then make this into a small handle that you could then put on the side of one of your little baskets that you're using. You could fold it and then create a little handle that would go on the outside. But I would never throw something like this away. I mean, it's too precious. It can be used, and it is an opportunity to think about some of the other items that you might be throwing away that you could be using instead of going and buying more of something that you don't really need to go buy more of. Okay, so here is all of this. And here is all of that, and then I just have these two. And because they match, I'm not going to stitch these two together, the two purple daisies. I'll wait until I have some more 2-inch strips that I can use, and I'm just going to hang on to this. Now I am not saving the little pieces of selvage edges. I know a lot of people do. They cut them off in one big piece, and that's awesome. I should get into the habit of doing that, but I'm not yet. Not there yet. Okay, so now the next step is to trim your thread and cut your pieces apart where they've been joined with the thread. Them to the ironing board and press them open. The general rule of thumb is that you press your seams toward the darker fabric. I generally, because I'm not putting a quilt per se together, I generally just press whichever direction the fabric itself wants to go. I haven't really run into a problem. I do press from both the top, the right side, and then flip it over and press on the back reverse side to make sure it's nice and flat. And in a moment I need to check my bobbin because I know I was getting pretty low. Decided to do is cut, this was right in the middle, this piece of fabric right here with the gardening tools, and I cut it in half so that I could then square up on this side and thereby retaining the height that I wanted right here, which is actually 8 inches. So now what I will do is take this over to the cutting table and get the lower edge completely squared up using my ruler and my rotary cutter, and I'm going to do the same thing along this edge so that both pieces of this are the same size. Okay, so I have 2 pieces of fabric that are cut to, what did I measure those at? 6 5/8 of an inch tall, and they are not the same length. One is 12 inches and the other one is 11 and just slightly over 11 and a half. So, but it can stay that way. So here's the thing. I could make a basket that was, say, this big. It'd be quite small, and I don't really want to do that, but it would give me, I have a lining for it. But I am actually going to set this aside and create the lining out of what I have left, or I'm going to use this to create another basket and use a solid piece of fabric for this. That's the more likely scenario. Alright, so here's a piece that has been stitched together, and it's just kind of a mess, but it would be perfect for a lining. Now, the way that fabric basket making goes for me is I just have two pieces of fabric here, and I am going to put them together, right sides together, and I can choose to make sure that my seams are lined up like you would if you were doing a quilt or something, or I can intentionally offset those, just kind of do a halfway offset, because I have enough fabric that I can slide the seam allowances so that they're not ever going to match up. And that is something that you can choose to do or choose not to do. The other thing I need to think about in the process of making my little basket is, what of these fabrics do I want lined up with what of these fabrics? And what I mean by that is, if you look at the right sides, you can see that some of these are this is lining up, this is lining up, this is not lining up, lining up, lining up, not lining up. If I flip this over, I'm going to get a completely different set of fabric. I don't think we have any lining up, and we do not. And I think I prefer that in this particular case. This one, everything lined up in this little guy. I mean, all the way around. I guess right here we've got a little bit off. But for the most part, it just kind of looks like it's all lined up when you're looking at it. And I love it. Don't get me wrong. I hope that was showing up. This little guy right here. I just love this. I love it, love it, love it. It's one of my favorite little makes. But I think I'm going to do it so that these are all different this time. Right here, it's just going to all be different. Some of my big clips, and clip this fabric together so that it stays where I have it right now. Check to see what I think of that. Okay, yep, I like it. So this, where the clips are, will be the top. Okay, so this will be the top. And I'm going to cut out boxed bottoms, which I would have to do on each side. But if you flip this over and look, you can see that I've got kind of a wonky little spot right here. And while this side is straight, it is still pretty wonky. So what I'm going to do is trim these down. And I'm just going to do it using my scissors. And you can use a ruler for this if you're more comfortable doing so. I just like to have something that I can use to mark as a, use this to run my pencil or pen edge on. And I generally cut on the inside of these lines. I don't cut on the lines or outside of the lines. So when I'm using my scissors, I'm just going to go to the inside of those chalk lines and trim out these little squares of fabric. Okay, so now I'm going to stitch on the side and then across the bottom and on the other side. I'm using the edge of my foot here, my sewing machine foot, as my seam guide. We can take these clips off of the top. We don't need anything to hold it together now because it's stitched. It's stitched along this edge, and across the bottom. So that's what we got so far. So to do this little boxed bottom, we're going to put our hand on the inside of our little project right here and just kind of open it up like this. So that's what it looks like, and we're just going to open it like that. So there is the little square that we cut out. We're just going to turn it like this. Now there's a bottom seam right there, and there is a side seam right there. And if we can get those two to match up, the easiest way is to just take the two cut edges, the ones that are in the middle, this little part that goes down to the middle, the little square. We want this one and the other one, like I said, it's easier to just reach inside, to just be pulled out away from each other, and they will automatically cause the side seam and the bottom seam to meet up. Now you do want those to meet up. It makes a really pretty seam and a nice finish. So we're going to do that, and then the easiest way is to lay the bottom seam going one direction and the side seam going the other direction, whichever works. That kind of locks them into place. Set this underneath your sewing machine, and I'm using the side of my foot again as my seam guide, and I am going to lock these stitches right here. Side, just kind of push those corners out, and that is just adorable. So there's the boxed corner. It doesn't really look any different visually than any other boxed corner that you might have done or might have seen. The only reason this one looks different is because my fabric stripping, putting the pieces together, is different. But there's a boxed corner right there. There's the other one. And on this one, basically the same. These are bigger, by the way. The amount of fabric that I used to make the boxed corners with this basket are a lot bigger than the ones that I just cut for this basket. So, okay, next step is to take these two pieces of fabric that we created for the lining, and one of them is this fabric and the other one is this fabric. I think they'll be kind of cute together a little bit different looking. And we're going to put the scrap fabric using 505 on both pieces. Okay, so I have two pieces of fabric that have been basically interfaced with cabbage. So here's one. And you can, straighten it out. I don't recommend doing this step on your ironing board, but after the fabric has dried, you can definitely iron it. If you're concerned about it making your ironing board sticky, either use a press cloth or a piece of paper between the 505 side and your ironing board. And definitely don't iron it with your iron on this side unless it's completely covered up. Now the great thing about 505 is it's repositional. So repositionable. That's a strange word. But what that means is I've got a bubble here that doesn't want to settle down. So I can just pull this fabric that has been attached with the spray away from that bubble, kind of work the bubble out, lay the fabrics flat down, and then just kind of work my fabric, kind of like contact paper, if you've ever worked with contact paper. And voila, no bubble. So now what we're going to do is create the lining for our basket identical. Then you can certainly do that by pinning this fabric that you've created to this fabric that you've created and use this as a pattern piece to cut out, and then you'll have identical lining pieces. Okay. Now this is the 505 spray basically tells you that it will not gum up your sewing machine needle. If you feel that it does, just keep, if you have them, eyeglass wipes that you tear out of a package, and you can wipe your needle off with one of those. I have not, knock on wood, I have not had any trouble with it being causing my sewing machine needle to get gummy or sticky to date. And in case you're wondering, why did I not cut out the boxed bottom? So I'm going to do the regular folded in boxed bottom edge like we did on the bag or the basket yesterday. And I'm looking from the inside to make sure here. I don't know if that's showing up. I don't think it looks like it is, but like that. So I can feel that with my hand on the inside. And remember, the lining part does not get turned to the right side out. It stays just like this, because this is what you want to see when you look inside of your little basket. You want to see this. You don't want to see that. This will be on the inside of the basket. I will then stitch this and we will be done. The other option at this point is to take a smaller piece like this and fold it like this and stitch that, stitch the ends in and make little handles to go on either side should you desire, if that's what you want to do. I think if I were making a bigger basket, I might. This is basically going to be either a scrap fabric storage basket or a thread basket, not a waste thread, but thread, like this kind of thread. You know, some type of notion. Maybe my pattern weights will go in here. Buttons might go in there. It's just I desperately need storage in this messy small sewing room, and using up my little scraps of fabric is like ideal for this. So I'm going to go look for some cardboard or plastic, and I'll be right back. Okay, so what I've done is I have inserted pieces of cardboard, and what I'm going to show you is this is very sturdy. This is more of a box, less of a basket or a bag. It honestly, there's no give at all. Like with this little guy right here, you know, he's pretty floppy, which I love. That is just so sweet. You know, and I can put it wherever I want it. I can shape it however I want to shape it. And then the next level is the little guy that we made yesterday. He's very, you know, he's bendy as well. He has a little bit more form and a little bit more structure than this guy. But this one, there is, I haven't stitched it yet, obviously, but there's like no give at all. I've got two small pieces in each end, and then, you know, just a piece that is in here. I did notice when I was cutting it the first time that if you try to go all the way across the front to the actual edge, you honestly, you can't move it. It becomes literally impossible to move. So I think I'm going to go ahead and give this a try. I like the idea of a little bit more sturdy, boxier little project. We'll give it a whirl and see what happens. I do need to go ahead and fold down the lining, which I think turned out really cute. And as you can see, the boxed corner, maybe you can see in there. I know, I'll flash my phone flashlight inside. Maybe that will help. Maybe. So, it's so hard to see. I'm gonna make this work. Okay. If I could turn it that way. Okay. Ish. It's working-ish. Kinda. Okay. So that's working just fine. Having it boxed the same method that we used on this on the outside, right here, works just as well as the cutout that we did on the outside of this little basket box bag thing. All right, let me back you up, I think maybe a little bit more. And we're going to fold in the outer edge like so. The main thing that we've got to remember in the construction of this, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to be sewing over cardboard with my Microtex Schmetz needle. Okay, it's finished. There it is. I think it's super cute. I think it would be really, really cute for storing thread, which is probably what I'm going to do. Okay, there we have it. So out of a whole bunch of scraps, I've managed to get a little slouchy basket, a very solid basket, and sort of a medium sized or sturdy basket. This is super, super sturdy with this cardboard in here, so that's something to consider. If you really need something like an actual box, this is probably the way to go right here. I will say that in the future, if I do that again, my go-to for getting that top put together is going to be... Okay guys, have a great day, and I will see you next time.